Hi, this is Stephen, and this is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology. And this is episode 18. Let's take a look at what we're going to do today. We're going to look at a lot of markets today. I sort of have a feeling that some people would like to have me examine, analyze people's, charts of public figures, but there's just a lot of things going on in our financial world, and so I just feel like I need to concentrate on that right now. We will, as usual, have the void of moon void of course calendar for this work week, and then we'll get into a number of markets and specifically look at Jupiter's transit as it moves as we get into December, January, February. Okay, void of course moon. What is it? Why is it important? The void of course moon is the period of time that it takes for the moon to transition between one astrological sign and another, and this takes place every 2.5 days. The moon goes through all the signs during its transit over a period of a month, and it changes signs every 2.5 days. Now, sometimes this transition takes place in a matter of minutes, 15 minutes typically, and on other occasions it can take hours, even a whole day, 24 hours to technically move from one sign to another. And it's these longer transition periods that are important because in my experience and in the tradition of astrology, what happens during long void of course moon periods is that there is a shift in psychology. The keywords I use, people feel a sense of disengagement, they shift into neutral, which isn't bad in itself, but if everybody is doing it, it tends to make it more difficult to get things accomplished during the work week. In addition to that, so let me back up just a little bit. So void of course moons are great if you can take the day off, or if you can, just adjust your schedule and do things that are a little bit less important in your work. But it's great for resting, playing, regrouping, and so forth. It is not a good time to make very important decisions, to spend money on high ticket items, buying that car, buying that house. And it's not a good time to start something that signifies a new stage in your life. And I usually represent that by, it's not a good time to get married. So if you can look ahead in a calendar and see when a void of course moon is taking place, you can hopefully adjust very important business activities around that time and reserve void of course moon periods for kind of secondary things, more maintenance type work. So here we go. This week we have a lot of void of course moon things going on. And so, kind of hang on to your hat. Monday, we have void of course starting very early in the morning, and this is Pacific Daylight Time, so you need to adjust it. This would be 4:30 in the morning East Coast time, but I'll just use Pacific time. 1:30 a.m. to 4:35 p.m. it is void of course. It's essentially throughout the workday. Wednesday, September 4th, it is void of course again very early, essentially 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. all day. Friday from 9:03 a.m. to early on Saturday morning. So 3 days out of this work week, we have this energy going on. So test it out for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. See what happens. But my recommendation is don't schedule something very important and expect it to, down the road, to to come out the way you would like it to. Again, if you go play golf, go to the beach, whatever, you'll have a particularly enjoyable time. Okay, let's look at some markets. Dow Jones, we are in a trading range here. We kind of, depends on how you're going to draw your chart patterns. Again, I use both technical analysis from traditional market analysis and I use astrology. I find the astrology very often indicates high price movement days or pivot points often. I've indicated these dates by these vertical lines. This may look confusing, it's really not, okay? The technical analysis stuff are these horizontal lines. They represent kind of support and resistance areas, and I've drawn in trend lines, and I have just standard momentum indicators down here. Well, this is what happened. We've kind of had a little bounce going on. Now we're up to what I see as resistance, kind of long-term resistance with this green trend line. If you track it back, you connect these lows, you can see that on Friday we pushed right up to that trend line and then fell back, okay? Now it's very important to combine methods of analysis. I'm combining the astrology with the technical analysis with what's going on in the news, the fundamental things, and so forth. It's just critical that you combine indicators. So what's going on this weekend? Well, today is Sunday, September 1st. I forgot to say that at the beginning. But today, early in this morning, I found out that, the U.S. tariffs on China are going ahead, and China immediately responded by increasing tariffs on the U.S. Now, normally this will not be good news for the Dow Jones and other indexes. They are likely to start going down. Okay. Now we have a couple astrology things coming up. One is tomorrow, and one is September 4th. And I'm going to look at some notes really quickly. This gets hard to keep everything in my head. Let me just double check on something here. Excuse me. Hang in there. The thing is, in general, and I'm going to talk about the Dow Jones chart relative to the United States astrology here in a second. In general, September, I see it as being a very challenging month. It is going to be a challenging month because of the U.S. astrology, what's going on with the tariffs and so forth. Kind of after September 4th, I don't see much in the way of astrology supporting this market. Okay? Again, we have to completely be open to changes in the political landscape and see what happens. But the astrology side of things is not supportive for this market to continue going higher, at least for the next, month or so. So that's what the astrology is telling me. We may, there's sort of a wild card. The September 4th could indicate some real manipulation coming into play or revealed, but we'll just have to see. Even technically, we have come up to this resistance point, which is often labeled a back test to something that had been support. We should come down on Monday. And so watch these price patterns. If we drop below this level, this blue line right here, we could be heading further south. Okay, U.S. dollar. U.S. dollar is gauged. I'm using proxies here on many of my charts. This is UUP, but it is at an all-time high. It is broken out above, sort of a triangle that was forming here. The astrology is supportive that it could continue higher. Now, combining some of the fundamentals of the world, the U.S. dollar is usually measured in a basket of other, relative to other currencies. And so this is it's telling us more about what's happening to the world at large than what's really going on in the U.S., because I don't think our economy is all that great. In fact, I think we could be in a recession right now, and it's just not being acknowledged. But this does not help our exports. Trump does not like the dollar going up. So there could be some, major news come out to try to bring the dollar down. However, having said that, looking at the astrology in the dollar, at least in the very short term, is that it should continue up at this level. Okay. Silver. Okay. Now I've looked at many of the precious metal stocks, mining stocks in this area. Even gold. It almost looks like silver has been recently leading this market. And it's had some this astrology date right through here was quite bullish. I could see it way ahead of time. And this is, just a week ago, if you listen to my podcast, that candlestick right there, I was saying, that was a Friday, and I was saying this rally could continue because Monday and Tuesday we have something that historically is bullish astrologically, and this is what happened, okay? Now we're getting a little overbought. We are overbought. Having said that, overbought indicators can last a long time. They are a little bit deceptive in that regard. We do, throughout this week in the astrology, have, generally speaking, energy that is supporting this rally. It is not as strong as a week ago, okay? But it's generally supporting this rally. We'll have to see what takes place, watch these, play the technicals, see what's going on. We've got a lot of air here underneath this market. However, if you look at the very long-term price patterns in silver and in gold, we have broken out. And the technical traders, the big heavy hitters in the markets know that this is going on and can see that silver has a lot of headroom and that this, any pullback is likely to be bought. So we're overbought. We could get a pullback. The astrology supports this market over the next week. Bitcoin, we're in sort of a dangerous situation. We've come down. It all depends on how you draw the price patterns here, because we have this long extended triangle going on. However, if you come all the way back and you look at this trend line going way back to April and then into May, and you connect the bottoms, we are resting on that trend line. And we have a number of kind of supportive levels just underneath us here. The momentum indicators are oversold. We're not far away from a bounce just from a technical level, okay? From the astrology level, we're looking at September 5th, okay, which is a Thursday. And it's a fairly significant dynamic in the astrology. Oftentimes, this dynamic indicates a pivot point, a reversal of some sort. Again, this is Thursday, September 5th. Watch that date. The odds are, this is not trading advice, but if I'm going to just analyze and try to combine all these indicators, the odds are, given that we're oversold, we have this typical astrology energy on the 5th, the odds are that we should get a bounce, maybe 4th, 5th, 6th. Look at those dates, but the primary day is the 5th, okay? If we break above this trend line, this market could rapidly move, Bitcoin could rapidly move higher. Now, in general, I forgot to add, when I look at Bitcoin and silver and gold, okay, things that could be construed as safe haven markets, if the indexes are tanking or there's a lot of concern in the world, they get stronger by the end of September. In general, these markets get stronger at the end of September from the astrological viewpoint. Okay, let's really dig into the astrology. This is for astrology geeks today, financial astrology geeks. This is the United States chart in the center here, okay? Our birthday is in July. Here we are, 13 degrees Cancer. we have transits going on that have been retrograde, coming back. In particular, Saturn this month is coming back. It looks like it's going in reverse from the Earth standpoint, but it's at 14 degrees Capricorn. Saturn is opposite the natal sun of the USA, and it has been for a while, and it's just returning for, essentially kind of 2 more times this September. September in the stock markets has always been a sort of an ominous month because we've had so many downturns and crashes happen in September and October. So in addition to the, excuse me, I'm going to cough just a second. Excuse me. So in addition to, having this seasonal pattern in trading where September and October are oftentimes difficult for the Dow Jones Industrials, in the U.S. in general, we have a sentiment that is increasingly maybe more kind of heavy or restrictive or, somewhat depressing. And that is intensifying a little bit this month. This is a month where the financial markets could somehow get reports that completely recognize that, we are quickly moving into a recession. That wouldn't surprise me at all, given the symbolism here. Saturn opposite the sun. Ongoing, we have Pluto opposite Mercury. And about a month or 2 ago, I went into this, and Pluto is dredging up a lot of kind of dark revelations about, what goes on at the highest levels of government and the corruption. And I think this was related to propaganda and fake news and on and on and on. Just that dark energy is surfacing, and people are understanding really, what's gone on and is going on in the back rooms of, of the powers that be. And this is going to continue. This Pluto opposite Mercury is going to continue for another year or so. Well, in September, we also, September is the month of Virgo. The sun is in Virgo. See where my cursor is up here. The sun, middle of the month, is always, every year, is conjunct Neptune in the U.S. chart. And so this is going to bring in just some confusion and uncertainty probably about our direction of our country. All these things added up, are going to weigh on the financial markets. Enough of that. Well, let's look down the road a little bit, though, and I'm going to look at a couple markets and the USA chart from a perspective of January 1st, 2020. So same natal chart for the USA's in the middle, and we have the transits of January 1st on the outside. And what's interesting here for the US, for gold, for Bitcoin, a number of markets that I cover, is that we have the transit of Jupiter. I'm circling it right here. The transit of Jupiter has moved from being in Sagittarius for about a year, and now it's moving into Capricorn. We have Capricorn is, always is going to be opposite Cancer. And so what is this going to mean to the U.S.? Well, this is going to be very interesting. From a financial perspective, we have always this threat of all this money printing that's gone on for 20 years, but particularly over the last 10 years, whether that's going to, at a certain point, kind of catch up with us and inflation could get out of hand. That's one interpretation of this, okay? Another interpretation is that, things sort of get better in some respects, and we've had a big downturn in the markets, and maybe the September and October is a plausible scenario, and by January things could be looking up in some fashion. However, we still have Saturn and Pluto generally opposite, important planets in the U.S. We have the Sun going through the second house. At the very worst case scenario with Jupiter is that, sometimes Jupiter brings in positive energy and expansion and opportunities and so forth and so on. But also, it can bring just an increase, which is more of a neutral application of its energy. It could be just an increase of something, and that could be an increase of inflation, or in a way, it can be a worsening of conditions just by virtue of things expanding. But it's going to be interesting. Mark your calendar, because let's tie this in to some other markets here. Let's look at gold and Jupiter. Gold, oddly enough, has a lot of energy in Capricorn, opposite the U.S. Cancer, okay? And so this transit of Jupiter, which again I'm circling, is coming over primary planets in the gold chart. On top of that, we have had, and we continue to have, Pluto conjunct Venus, which I think is very much related to this bullish breakout in the gold chart, which is going to continue. This is a slow-moving transit, okay? And this is going to continue at least for a year in my estimation, okay? Not trading advice, but that's my estimation. And it could really accelerate in January, February, and so forth, because it would be symbolized by Jupiter moving through Capricorn. If you tie that possibility into the financial world and Jupiter opposite the U.S. and so forth and so on, that inflation hypothesis grows in credibility or as being a possibility. And again, the Sun, when the Sun is in Capricorn in January, so the Sun will be also activating this energy. On top of that, Venus is going over the ascendant of gold. Look for things to continue to the upside in gold and silver. And I mentioned, and even in Bitcoin, because oddly enough, we have this polarity between the U.S. and gold and Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is also a Capricorn energy, like gold, okay? It too will be having Jupiter transiting through Capricorn into next year, the beginning of next year. Here's Bitcoin's Sun, 13 degrees. Here's the transit on January 1st, 6 degrees. It will have crossed Pluto. I see this as being positive for the continued upward movement of Bitcoin. So watch that. Let's add silver into the mix. Again, we have this polarity, Cancer, Capricorn, but in this case, silver its birthday is nearly the same as the USA's chart. Here it is at 13. We're going to have oppositions come up. We're going to have Jupiter opposite Sun and Pluto. Sun is going to activate this even more in January, and we're going to have Pluto opposite Pluto in which actually is taking place right now in the silver chart. So these, I think, are, you even see that happening right now in the technical analysis. These are extremely positive. I think these are going to even increase beginning next year. So anyway, that's it for today. Again, my name is Stephen. I have an art and psychology background, master's degree in psychology, been studying astrology for 40 years and applying it to the financial markets for 25. I'm a hard money crypto advocate. I think they both have their place in one's portfolio. I lean a little bit more onto the precious metals side of things. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I do accept Bitcoin. So thanks for listening. I hope to have another video in a week.